This short video has been prepared for the City of Jerome's elected and appointed officials in an effort to provide a briefing on the Jerome County Multi-Jurisdiction All-Hazard Mitigation Plan 5-year update. The process that was used to conduct this update is illustrated in this slide. Note the bright green areas on this work layout is areas where we have been conducting electronic participation. One of those steps was to communicate risk and vulnerability to the public and elected officials. Note that we are doing this through this particular video in an effort to increase the viewing and information provided and to decrease the time that is required in your regularly scheduled City Council meetings. The basis for the risk analysis process, which we have just undertaken, is the determination of the return interval in relationship to hazardous events. We look primarily at natural hazard events, and we look over recorded history to determine the number of events that have occurred. We've determined the number of years it's been, the data has been maintained, and then we are able to calculate statistically the probability of a reoccurrence of that hazardous event. In this particular example, there were 17 events that occurred over a span of 23 years, yielding a probability of reoccurrence of 73.9%, which gave a recurrence interval in years as 1.35 years. In other words, the event is probable to occur every 1.35 years. Once the hazard frequency and return interval has been calculated, we score all hazards on using 5 categories. Historical occurrence, which looks at the number of historical occurrences within the recorded data which is available. We calculate the probability, which we've described. Then we determine the vulnerability of people and property from that particular hazardous event. We determine the percentage of the jurisdiction that would be affected geographically. So this is a geographical determination rather than looking at people and property. Then we determine the magnitude, which examines injuries and illnesses, loss of life, property damage, and business interruption or other economic losses. Once we have completed the analysis for each of the hazards, which have been listed on similar to this particular chart on the left-hand side, we take the 5 distinct categories and list them across the top and enter a score for each of those, total them, and then determine the ranking based on the total score. This is an example and does not reflect Jerome County, but is an example just to illustrate what your particular risk ranking chart will look like, which is to follow. The hazards which were examined included drought, severe weather, with 5 subcategories: extreme heat, lightning, hail, tornado, and straight line wind, and severe winter weather, which includes extreme cold and severe winter storms such as blizzards. We examined flooding, including flash flooding, river flooding, and dam failure, and we also examined geologic. In Jerome County, the only geologic hazard that we were able to determine was that from an improbable earthquake. We also examined wildfire and biological hazards. This year we have added burrowing rodents as a hazard because of the outbreak of pocket gophers in southeastern Idaho and south central Idaho. These pocket gophers have been creating havoc on canal banks and other waterborne systems. The other areas that we look at is vector-borne diseases such as West Nile virus and communicable diseases which are human-borne such as the swine flu. We've also, for Jerome County, because of the dairy industry, added a specific area that looks at livestock diseases. We also examined technological or man-made hazards such as structure fire, hazardous materials, civil disobedience, and terrorism. For the city of Jerome, which, as in all areas in Jerome County, is a relatively safe place to live, there's only a small area of floodplain, which is just in the northwest corner of the city boundaries and is illustrated here. Other flooding that is recorded for the city of Jerome is primarily based around canal failures or around sheet flooding that comes from the sudden melt of snow or flash flooding from thunderstorms. A particular concern in the city of Jerome is the hazardous material storage that is within the city limits. These red dots indicate facilities that store hazardous materials within Jerome County, and each facility has been analyzed to determine a protective action distance should the entire storage capacity be released. Note this large circle around the city of Jerome. That particular release is from a dairy production facility, and the release is from anhydrous ammonia, which is used as a refrigerant. The hazard severity ranking then for the city of Jerome is has one high hazard, which is hazardous materials, as indicated in the previous slide. The remainder of the hazards are ranked as medium or low. For each of the high hazards that are identified, a mitigation project is required to be developed as part of this planning effort. We've taken the liberty to generate a very easy project for the city of Jerome. In the fall of last year, 2014, the South Central Idaho region completed a regional hazardous material flow study, which has been provided to Jerome County, and what we would recommend is that the findings from that study be communicated to the public regarding the amount of hazardous material that is transported and stored in the city of Jerome. Other projects that are listed here are carryovers from the 2009 all hazard mitigation plan that we believe that have not been completed. Some of these, such as placing retaining hardware on the city library shelves, may be not required because of the low potential or probability of an earthquake event in Jerome County. The plan has been completed for review and placed on the Jerome County website. You can find that plan by going to the Jerome County website, clicking on Departments and selecting the Office of Emergency Management, going to the bottom of that department page and clicking on Links, which would open a links page. At the bottom of that page is a link to the Jerome AHMP update. We are just completing our editing and final proofing of the document, and it will be updated. There's a draft copy on there now, and it will be updated in the next few days. We encourage you to go to the website and view and review the plan and provide comments if you feel that any are needed. So our next steps is we will provide this video to the city clerk and request that the clerk distribute it to the elected and appointed officials, and then to gather a list of those who viewed the video on a form that we will send with this particular email to communicate or to transmit the video. We'd ask that you'd provide any comments on the risk ranking or comments on the mitigation projects. Certainly encourage any additional projects that you would like to add, and then prioritize, examine the prioritization, and make sure that you agree with the projects as we have prioritized them. The final step will be to pass a resolution by the City Council to adopt the plan following its review and approval by FEMA, which will take about 2 months, and we will be coming back to you with that resolution, which we have prepared and is in section 5 of the plan currently. So if you have any comments, please direct them to Rick Fawcett at Whisper Mountain Professional Services at rick.whispermountain@gmail.com, or to Mr. Clint Blackwood, who is the Jerome County coordinator of the Office of Emergency Management. Thank you for your time.